December 7th, 1941, a day which will live in infamy, which was uttered by President Roosevelt after the bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese Navy. That interests me. World War II interests me, especially the part of the Japanese carrying out successful bombing in Pearl Harbor. At the time, it was thought that the state of Japan was a backwater country, and how could they possibly pull off a successful bombing raid against a superpower like the United States? So that brought me to want to research a little more about Japanese culture and their immigration to the United States. In the 1800s, they started to immigrate here. Between 1886 and 1911, more than 400 Japanese men and women immigrated to the U.S., and over 28,000 of them immigrated to Hawaii. And here is and here's a picture of, if you can see that, of a family immigrating to the United States at the time. Over in Hawaii, the relationship between Hawaii and the Japanese were a little different. They accepted them more openly. Whereas here in the United States, there was a little diversity problem. The major cause was competition between Japanese and American workers. But Japanese still came because dreaming of a better life in America. So they continued to migrate to the United States. After 1941, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Japanese families were rounded up and put into internment camps across the United States. And here is such of those outside of the internment camp. As you can see, the large fence, and the families moving in right there. Many of them were pretty sad about that, but they wanted to put the Japanese all together to prevent what they thought was sabotage on military assets. There, the first Japanese-American communities were formed, and the first schools established. And this brings us to the education. The cultural thinking that the success of an individual attains through education is good for the entire group of Japanese Americans, and not just for the individual. So we have a 2000 Census Bureau which states that foreign-born Japanese men, 52% completed college, whereas the white Americans was only 30%. As you can see, we have some of the census data for the nations there. So so this brings us to their religion. When the first immigrants made their way to the United States, their main religious beliefs was Buddhism and Shinto. These were not just religion to Japanese, but were a way of life for them. Japanese Americans brought with them belief of one of these religions, but the faith allowed them tolerance of other religions, so they were Japanese Americans were easily assimilated into the religious practices of the United States. Japanese Americans were more evenly mixed. More than a third of them are Christian. Another third are religiously unaffiliated, and a quarter of them are now Buddhists, and that is as of 2012. This brings us to the Japanese family. Family is a very important aspect of Japanese heritage. However, assimilation in the American culture has changed them. It has changed the aspect somewhat. The first generation of Japanese immigrants, known as Asai, it was dishonorable to marry outside your culture or race. It was dishonorable to not support the elders of the family, and males and females did not have the same duties in the family. The women of the Japanese were to live in servitude of their male counterparts. After generations of this, it has changed now. The immigration as of 2010 or so, well, before that even, but now Japanese can marry between cultures, and the women do have more freedoms to live according to their own preferences, and they can be equal with the man right as of now. So saying is America has changed them from the original Japanese families of the 1800s now to the 2000s. We see that they are more Americanized. So the new generations of Japanese Americans still bring their parents and elders, older family members to the United States once they've settled in their new homes. So I hope I have brought a little bit of light to the Japanese culture and the way that America has changed them for the better. Thank you very much.